In Locke's view, when we enter into a political community, we have to give up our perfect freedom. So when he's describing the state of nature, he describes it as a state of perfect freedom. When we enter a political community, we have to give up certain of our freedoms, which thereby renders the political community, it's not a state of perfect freedom. You still have some of your freedoms, you retain many of your freedoms, but you don't retain them all. And so the political community is not a state of perfect freedom, nor is it a state of perfect equality. By entering into the political community, we introduce into the midst of us, into our community, a certain kind of inequality. And so, what I want to discuss very quickly here, in this last video on Locke, is how exactly, or what freedoms we give up, and how exactly inequality is introduced into the political community when we enter it. Locke phrases this as giving up two rights. When we enter a political community, we give up two rights. In the first place, we give up the right to do whatever we see fit to do. And when Locke discusses this, he actually he sounds somewhat Hobbesian. He describes, in his view, in a state of nature, we have the freedom, the perfect freedom, to do whatever we see fit to do to preserve ourselves. That sounds very Hobbesian. But then Locke adds, within the confines of the law of nature. We give up that perfect freedom by entering a political community. We agree to regulate our behavior by the laws of the political community. So we were not going to do whatever we see fit to do to preserve ourselves any longer. We're going to listen to the regulations and laws of the political community. We're going to follow them. We grant them the authority, and so we do what the political community requests. Think back when we were talking about consent. Um, the political community, to join it, you need a consent. But once you're in it, what you've agreed to join is a community wherein the majority have the right to act on behalf of the whole. And so if you're in that minority, right, you disagree with what the community is going to do, you nonetheless have to follow it, right? You gave up the right to do just whatever you wanted when you joined the political community. So, for example, let's say the political community says we're no longer going to fish in that lake over there, right? What I don't know, we don't want to overfish it, and no fishing in that lake. And there was a vote, and the majority said, yeah, we agree. But you are in the minority. You like fishing over in that lake. If this were a state of nature, you could do whatever you see fit to do to preserve yourself. You can go fish in the lake, no problem. Nobody can tell you not to. You have the right to do it. But now that you're in a political community, you have to subject yourself to its regulations and rules. You give up the right to do whatever you see fit to do. And so even though you think it's silly to prohibit fishing in the lake, if that's what the political community decides, you are required to go along with it. You no longer have the right to do whatever you see fit to do to preserve yourself. You have to listen to these rules and regulations. Yeah. So that's one right that we give up when we enter the political community. What he's really getting at here, what Locke's really getting at here, this is the sense in which in a political community, you do not have perfect freedom, right? That's what he's getting at here. Whereas in a state of nature, you would. Second thing he mentions, and we've already discussed this, or I've mentioned this to the side kind of, when you enter a political community, you give up the right to punish transgressors of the law of nature. You give that right up. You no longer have the right. You no longer have the power and jurisdiction to punish people who violate the law of nature. That doesn't work so well. Those were what those deficiencies of nature that Locke discusses indicate or illustrate for us, right? Having everybody be judges, it's not going to work out so well. People aren't going to want to be judges. They're not going to be indifferent. And okay, fine. And so when we join a political community, what we do is we set up a kind of judicial branch. We set up courts and kind of executive branch, a police force to help execute the law and so on. and we cede our power to enforce the law of nature to the political community. And so we no longer have that power and jurisdiction. But that was what our perfect equality consisted in, according to Locke. There's still nonetheless, right, enforcing of the law of nature. That power, that jurisdiction is transferred to other people, people who occupy particular roles, right? And so a certain kind of inequality in power is introduced by entering into a political community, by trying to resolve these deficiencies that the state of nature runs into. And so we give up our perfect equality in entering into a political community. But Locke thinks that the deficiencies of the state of nature are so severe, that the state of nature is so kind of bad, that it's worth giving up this freedom and giving up on equality. It's worth introducing some inequality, and it's worth giving up our perfect freedom, because what we gain in so giving up some freedoms and giving up on equality in this way, what we gain is mutual protection of property. People aren't going to steal our stuff. We'll be able to enjoy it and use it. And that, according to Locke, is the whole point and purpose of political community. And the political community tends to be very good at doing that. And so according to Locke, it's a deal that that rational people would take without hesitation.